Hello and welcome to Bernadette's Way. Today I'm going to be making apple pie. Let's get started making apple pie. To start your apple pie, you need 2 9-inch pie crust. I am making a homemade pie crust. I will have the recipe in the description. In a food processor, add in your dry ingredients. 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon of sugar, and 1 teaspoon of salt. Then pulse to mix your dry ingredients. Add in 2 sticks of cold unsalted butter cut into cubes about 1/2 inch thick. Then pulse 6 to 8 times until the mix resembles coarse meal. I have to pulse a few times and then shake the container. Then I repeat the process until the mix is ready. Then add in 1 tablespoon of ice cold water 6 to 8 times and pulse after you add in each tablespoon of water. Now when I say ice cold, I do mean ice cold. There needs to be ice already forming in, let's say, a water bottle. I took a water bottle from the fridge and put it in the freezer, and in about an hour it was ready. As long as you can still pour water out from it, it should be good. So it is best to keep the water bottle facing up and not laying completely down when you place it in the freezer. Stop adding tablespoons at a time of water once the dough starts to form in the food processor. Next, you want to place your dough onto a clean surface and form 2 discs. Try to work quickly. Your hands will start to melt the dough, the butter that is inside the dough. To have a flaky crust, push your dough in with your palms. I do not do this with my dough. You do not want to over knead this dough. Now these 2 discs will be your top and your bottom crust for the apple pie. If you are purchasing pie crust from the store, make sure to get 2 9-inch pie crust for the top and the bottom of the pie. This dough does need to be put inside of an airtight container. I'm using quart storage bags. This dough can be put in the freezer for faster results for about an hour to an hour and a half, but in the fridge is best. You do not need to pre-bake the crust because it will bake with the apples in the oven. You can crisp the crust up more in the oven at a lower temperature for longer to make sure that the dough is cooked, but I think this crust bakes well with this recipe. As you see in the video, I am trying to collect all the little pieces as I form the dough into disc. After you have your 2 discs, place each one inside of an airtight container in the fridge. Refrigerate overnight. Then you want to peel 8 small Granny Smith apples. I accidentally used the large Granny Smith apples and I was able to make 2 pies without changing anything else in the recipe. The pie still had an apple taste and was not overly sweet. If you would prefer an apple taste like this, make half of the butter mix recipe with your small Granny Smith apples for your 1 pie. This is kind of what I did by doubling the apples. I do not show the butter mix being made in this video, but it will be in the description as well as a link to the original recipe. Next, cut all of your apples. Make sure to remove any part of the seeds. You can cut your apples any way that you like, but I prefer them in smaller pieces than just slices. I think they cook more evenly and are coated better in the sugar butter mix. You can also slice into the pie much easier. As you may have noticed, this recipe is made with green apples. But if you try this recipe with a different apple, like red or gala apples, let us know in the comments how your apple pie came out. Next, preheat your oven to 475 degrees Fahrenheit. Then set out your crust for 5 to 10 minutes. As long as you can push your finger a little into the dough with a little resistance, I think it should be ready to work with. Then roll out your dough until it is about 1/4 inch thick. It also needs to be 1 inch or so wider than the pan you are using because you will need to place it into your 9-inch pie pan. In the video, I use a regular pie pan and a disposable pie pan. I am starting with the bottom of my pie crust. I use the wax paper so that I use less flour and so that my roller does not stick to the dough as I am rolling. I can work much faster this way. I test fit my pie pan to make sure that my dough is wide and long enough for the pie pan. Then I use the flip method to get the pie crust onto the pan and try my best to keep it centered as I am flipping it. I push in the sides of the pie crust to make sure that there are no air bubbles between the crust and the pan. Then once you are finished, cut off the excess dough from the sides of the pan. Then you want to poke holes into your bottom crust only with a fork. You do not need to do this with your top crust. Next, prepare your butter sugar mixture and then combine with your apples. I do not show this mix being made in the video, but the recipe will be in the description as well as my changes to the recipe. Make sure to mix thoroughly. You do want to make sure that you leave your butter mix simmering. I do not do that and my sauce started to thicken. But don't worry, this does not affect the pies. I was able to make 2 pies with the mixture. I had to set half of the apples in the fridge while the first pie baked, and I prepared my second pie crust. I was not expecting to have so many apples, so I knew that I did something wrong, but it was a happy mistake. Then add your apples to your pie or pies. You do want a small mound of apples for your pie. It may look like too many apples, but the apples will bake down. You can also make a deep dish pie by using more apples. This recipe is easy to double or half the recipe to make your perfect pie for your home. Next, prepare your top crust. Lattice work is optional. You can also create different kinds of designs with your top crust to fit the holiday. The dough is rolled out the same as the bottom because I need enough strips of dough to create the lattice design. I use a pizza cutter to cut the strips of dough. I am not trying to make perfect lines at all, but you can use a stencil if you need the lines to be spaced evenly apart. Then place your top crust on top of your pie. Once your top crust is ready, cut off all the excess dough from around the pan. Next, using a fork, press all the way around the crust of the pie as shown in the video. You can still put hearts or leaves depending on the season on top of the lattice work. Or maybe no lattice work at all, and you just cut out the shapes that you want from the rolled out dough. But just remember that the top crust does need some holes. These holes will allow the heat and moisture to escape from the top of the pie as it bakes in the oven. Once your top crust is prepared, make your egg wash. I just mix an egg and 1 to 2 tablespoons of water. Then coat your top crust with the egg wash using a cooking brush. I completely forgot to coat the first pie with the egg wash. This step is optional, but I do think it makes the pie shiny and gives it a better flavor. Then bake your pie for 15 minutes at 425 degrees Fahrenheit. Then bake your pie for an additional 35 to 45 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. I had to bake my pies for 45 minutes until they were nice and golden with the pie crust that I used. Right after I lowered the heat, I needed to place pie crust metal covers over the crust to make sure that my crust did not burn. Let the pie cool completely so it has time to thicken. I did not do this with my first pie. I was ready for a slice. However, in the video, I also show the second pie already cooled so that you can see what the egg wash can do for the pie crust, as well as letting the pie cool completely. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you found anything helpful or delicious in the video, please sweeten up my day by hitting the like button. Thanks for watching, take care, and stay sweet.